Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of again. Thank you, man.
He didn't just say it once. He said it twice. James Harden at a basketball camp for 9-year-olds in China had that to say about the guy who has been his general manager with the Houston Rockets, the guy who took the big shot on James back in 2012, saw Harden develop into one of the most prolific scorers in the NBA after that. Pretty damn good run with the Rockets in some aspects. Definitely got frustrating towards the end, specifically with the way that Daryl Morey essentially forced his way out of town. This comes in response to an article that popped up on Saturday, courtesy of Adrian Wojnarowski. The headline reads, 76ers ending trade talks for James Harden and plan to bring him back to training camp for the start of the season, setting up an uncomfortable situation with the unhappy star. There were some conversations with the Clippers where James Harden wants to go, but no traction on a deal materialized. I do think it stands to reason that there was some sort of a handshake agreement with James Harden last offseason when Harden took a pay cut that he wanted everyone to give him more credit for after not playing that well, which allowed the Sixers to make things a little bit easier for their books. And that has yet to happen. So you get this out of James Harden. There is a retweet of Adrian Wojnarowski's article by Bobby Marks of ESPN. He is an NBA front office insider. He wrote this. Here's the CBA language for withholding services. A player who withholds playing services called for a player contract for more than 30 days after the start of the last season covered by his player contract shall be deemed not to have completed his player contract by rendering the playing services called for thereunder. A lot of legal gobbledygook here. Accordingly, such a player shall not be a veteran free agent and shall not be entitled to negotiate or sign a player contract with any other professional basketball team unless and until the team for which the player last played expressly agreed otherwise, which is not happening with the 76ers. They want him to play, and they're going to try to play hardball and make him actually show up here. I'm very curious as to what happens. If you're the Sixers, this is really the only play that you have. You have to just hope that he's eventually going to feel guilty and come back onto the court. He said, obviously, Harden did there, I will never be in a part of an organization that he's a part of. I feel like there's been no one that's had James Harden's back more than Daryl Morey over the course of his career. No one. No one has caped for this guy who has quit on teammates and coaches alike, like Daryl Morey. And what do you expect if you're Daryl Morey and you are the guy that backs this guy who has burnt every single NBA bridge that he's had with somebody in his career? He really has. What did you expect? We'll see what happens going forward. I do love that this is not a Houston Rockets issue. It did feel at points this offseason like this is a guy who could be on the team. Because if he came back to the Rockets, I'm sure that there would be some nice moments early on. But eventually it always ends like this with James Harden. Always. It's kind of funny to see Philadelphia dealing with it right now. 713-780-3776 to call in and to text in as well. We do have a text before we get back to the phones. Paul, you are proof positive that sports commentators know nothing about pop culture. Mixing Lizzo with Meghan Trainor is mind-numbing. Of course, you're a Tom Brady sycophant, so there's that. I don't see how the two are related. Look, I'm not a musical person, Eric in Jersey Village. I'm just not. All I know about Lizzo is that she's fat and that Meghan Trainor is also fat. Like, that's it. That's all I know. So, to me, same person. If I heard their songs, would I confuse them? Possibly. I've honestly thought that there was a chance that All About That Bass, No Trouble was something that Lizzo would have maybe done her own. I don't know. Especially if she's like the The body positivity lady. Whatever. We also have on the phone line 713-780-3776 calling in Keith. Keith, what's going on?
Hey, Paul, thanks for making this the most interactive sports talk show in the city of Houston. Quick question. The Wheelhouse wrapped up last week. Just wanted to know what your fondest memory of the Wheelhouse was.
Ooh. My fondest memory of the Wheelhouse.
I have a Paul Gallant fondest memory of the Wheelhouse, but you.
My favorite Wheelhouse memory was every single time that I subbed in and just made radio excellence in the afternoons. That was my favorite moment.
My favorite one was when you agreed to come on. What segment was it? Was it like a Which One Wednesday? Or no, Hypothetical Tuesday. Hypothetical Tuesday. You agreed for 4:45 to come on, and then you just slept through it.
Hypothetically, it would have been a great segment.
Hypothetically.
Right.
And then the next week, they asked me to be on, and they're like, just please be awake. I was like, I can do that.
I took a late night nap. Or late afternoon nap, a little siesta. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, no, but thank you for taking the nap. Then I got to, be on a giant platform on the phone with Hypothetical Tuesday.
I like those guys, the Wheelhouse guys. I do. Also, I'm not going to lie, like 3 to 7, it's always the time I've wanted to host. It's really where I'm at. Definitely wish Brad the best, wish Cody the best, and we'll see. I have no idea what's going to happen next. I've had a bunch of people asking me. Sorry, they do not. They do not let me know anything, and they probably shouldn't, because I'm a blabbermouth and I would reveal all of it on the air. So totally understandable on their end. Anyway, we got some texts and Twitch comments. HRW_S1W says, we don't use fat, Paul. It's gravitationally challenged. Oh, okay. Listen, I'm a big believer that you owe it to yourself and everybody else in your life to put yourself in the best shape that you possibly can. So you live the longest. But that's just me. I get it. Don't be mean to people who are bigger. But I don't know. I feel like it's kind of gone a little bit too far, this old pendulum that we have in a game that we call life. As far as everything is to be lauded and applauded for just being yourself. Certain situations, maybe, I don't know. Say you're hosting a reality TV show where the people on it are dancers. I don't know. Maybe it helps if they're in shape. It's probably easier to dance for a long period of time if you're, of all of the big girls on that show, the one in the best shape. Just a thought. I don't know. Maybe we could ask James Harden. Does James Harden feel like when he shows up to a season looking like he's wearing a fat suit, does he feel like he's as good as when he doesn't look like he's wearing a fat suit? I don't know. Anyway, these are the questions, the mysteries of life. 713-780-3776 to call in. To text in as well. Harden is such a crybaby, and he's a liar too, constantly blaming his duo for why he fails in the playoffs. I would say that Harden's lack of accountability is one of the major reasons that I don't even think it's possible to have empathy for him. You just can't. How can you? Does anyone have a way to put yourself in Harden's shoes and think yeah, everything that he's doing is good? Is he getting one over on the bosses? That's pretty much it. Is that he's getting paid a ton of money and he's just yeah, you guys paid me. Suck it. That is the one thing that I feel like is a little bit relatable. But everything else, it's do you have no shame, man?
He has a shred of I don't know, righteous cover on this, because if Daryl Morey did go back on his word, that is something where it's
100%.
If you wanted to defend James Harden, that's what you would say.
And that's why he should say that publicly, because people will some people, I would even in that spot, I would take his side on that. If I don't know what the logistics are for a handshake agreement, but here's the thing.
I think it's illegal in the NBA to have one. to sign a contract and be like, but we'll make you whole on the back end. Like that's how the Minnesota Timberwolves lost like all their draft
that's a fair
all
point.
Their draft picks for a few years.
But so if Harden throws them under the bus, I mean, isn't he? You may as well do it. That's the nuclear option.
Yeah, no.
If this actually happened, like let's see it. Let's show the evidence of it. And I think some people will actually take your side here. Someone asked, by the way, before you continue your thoughts, Sean, are we sure this wasn't pandering to the Chinese crowd since Morey made the Hong Kong comments? I think there might have been a little of both. I think he knew his audience. Like I think he's just playing it smart.
Again, like the Adrian Wojnarowski article, that's basically the Philadelphia 76ers press release that says like, nope, they're going to bring him into camp and we're going to be comfortable being uncomfortable, was also the day before. So maybe that's the timing as opposed to like always this grand conspiracy involving China. Like, I don't know. Like James Harden doesn't seem like he's the most like geopolitically adept person.
I don't think he cares, and you know what? I respect it.
Yeah,
if he doesn't care at all, I respect it. But I also think that he's smart enough to know that if he is saying something bad about Daryl Morey in China, that like people will probably cheer it because there are a lot of people that believe in the idea of one China.
I mean, they get told to hate Daryl Morey. Like, that's the thing. It's not even like they have like these like beliefs of Daryl Morey. It's like they've just been told to hate this guy, so the state runs what they get taught.
Mm-hmm. He might be the most hated American in China.
Ooh, I would love a power ranking.
Okay, Mount Rushmore of hated Americans by the Chinese. 713-780-3776 to call in and to text in.
Give us some options, because I would just love it for it to be like Daryl Morey and then just like a list of like U.S. presidents or like
whoever was the one that did not fix Yao Ming's feet. Like that he'd be up there.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if that was possible. But anyway, but I'm sure that'll be a loaded conversation that will not lead to any political hot takes on the Twitch or on the text line. Who are the Americans that China hates the most? Because Daryl Morey's got to be up there. Someone texted in Papa Trump. Hands down is China's number one enemy. The way that he says China makes me laugh. It really does. Someone else texted in Chuck Norris. Another texted in Clay Walker. Is there something that Clay Walker has said about China when he went on that rant against the bus driver? Was that also part of a larger takedown of the Communist Party of China or something like that? Or was that just all Clay being a douche to his driver?
I looked up Clay Walker China. Nothing comes up.
I couldn't find anything either. So
I can't imagine that they know. Like, even if he did say something anti-China, I doubt that they care enough to know who it is.
I don't think that he's high on the list of like relevant hated Americans in China. Some more comments on the text line. How many strippers has James lied to? Well, I don't really understand your question, or excuse me, your statement here. I feel like James Harden does tip well. I mean, I feel like he's always got cash on him. So I could be wrong here, but I feel like James Harden is a good tipper. Also, another texter, he forced his way out of Houston. Morey and Harden deserve each other. Morey did, in a way, do the Rockets dirty, but at the same time, it was a very, very sinking ship. You know, that thing was heading to the bottom. So I kind of get why Daryl Morey would force his way out, even if the actual logistics of the way that he did it, maybe per some in the Rockets organization, weren't great.
I also just feel like if who cares? Like, if he did it the quote unquote right way, like, who cares? Like, the Rockets maybe would have gotten like a second round pick because he was under contract with the Rockets still. Mm-hmm. So they could have traded him for a second round pick, but like, what are we talking about?
Exactly.
Like, or he has to stay here and honor his contract where he, I don't know, trades James Harden and goes into year one of a rebuild. Like, what? Why? It was always a thing of like, I understand that Daryl Morey did the Rockets dirty, but also I don't care. Like, I don't care what. It's like when someone like cuts you off in traffic, but like nothing happens. It's just like, this sucks, but I don't know. Nothing really affected my life here.
It is a bit of a double standard, though, that Morey essentially did what Harden has done. And as an executive, we care a little bit less about an executive
that
doing
always
it
happens
versus a player.
That happens in college football. The coaches can leave after every other year, and no one cares. But
the players really
can't. Yeah.
And if they do, they sometimes get dumped on themselves.
They get dumped on, and then the NIL, like, all these guys are doing things for money. It's like, well, so are the coaches. So is the universities, as UCLA and USC and Oregon and Washington are going to play in the Big Ten next year. Like, there is the double standard where we hold the athletes to like a higher standard than the executives.
I think what makes Harden different, though, with that double standard, Sean, is the fact that he's done this a lot.
Yeah.
In the way that he's done it. I understand the idea that, hey, if you're working at a company in America, assuming you don't have some sort of non-compete clause in your contract, which I think are absolutely the devil. I remember one time I was filling in with Lance Zierlein doing a show on 610, which did not give me any severance when they let me go. And 610 called the cops, essentially. Like they said, like, yeah, we're threatening legal action if Paul does another show because his non-compete hasn't ended. And I'm like, you guys didn't even give me any money. Like, you just let my contract expire for 5 months. And then all of a sudden, the one time I fill in on a show in town, like a month later, 7 months after my contract had expired, you're going to try to enforce it. But it was, I guess, legally enforceable. So I hate stuff like that. But I mean, there are essentially non-compete clauses in professional sports. And I can understand why, for some, it's like, this is BS. If the guy wants to play somewhere, he should be able to play wherever he wants. But I also think when you sign a contract, like the contracts that James Harden signed, it's either you want to make all the money that you possibly can, or you want to have these flexibility to, in the future, assuming your play continues, to pick wherever you go. And it's going to be more and more difficult to do as you get into your mid to late 30s, which is where Harden finds himself right now. If Harden was playing at a higher level, this situation, I think, would probably have been resolved by now because somebody would have decided we're going to trade a lot for him, at least to have him temporarily or something like that. But the fact that Harden is not playing as well as he used to, even if he did have some good moments last year or in the playoffs, and is essentially saying, I'm only going to one team, he's kind of killing his own leverage in the process by saying that I only want to go to one team. If you want to get out of, what's your priority here? Is it to play for LA or is it to get out of Philly? Because right now it just seems like it is to get out of Philly. And since you kind of portrayed it in this way, especially with this comment that you said over the weekend, where you're basically saying like F Daryl Morey and F this team, you're basically saying I care more about leaving. And whoa, is that organization going to help you leave if you're not even going to play nice publicly? Probably not.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason that he, opted in instead of opted out this year, is that basically after Houston moved in a different direction, him opting out, he could have been a free agent, but then the Clippers couldn't have signed him. The only teams with free agent dollars were the Spurs, the
Rockets,
the Pistons, the Magic, like
bums.
It's all these teams. I'm like, of course he doesn't want to play for these guys,
right?
So I like opting in and then demanding a trade was the best way to get to not only a team that he wants to go to, but also probably a team that wants him. Like if you think about the Pistons, the Magic, the Spurs, like they don't need James Harden. They don't want James Harden.
Right.
Same reason that it would have been a weird fit on Houston to have James Harden. It's like they don't really need this guy. Don't need, like, he's a great player to be the best player on our team, but we're looking to develop the young guys. It's hard to do that with James Harden. And now we're going to get a whole bunch of texts about why it's so easy to develop young players with James Harden, even though no one in the league wants them.
I remember I could have seen a way where the Rockets could sell it to themselves, but I'm so glad they decided not to. They operated like a smart organization.
And it just the whole, like, Damian Lillard is doing basically this. Actually, he's probably doing a more egregious version of anything that James Harden has done. And it like you mentioned that if James Harden was better, that this situation would have been resolved. Well, Damian Lillard's situation is not resolved either.
It's not, but he's more likable, and this is it. So that is just a weird subjective thing. People like Damian Lillard more than they like James Harden. This is not really debatable. This is the first time that Lillard's ever done this.
But I mean, even after the first time, people turned on James Harden.
Right. With Lillard, there is this idea that he has been this tragic Kevin Garnett-esque hero for the majority of his career, where Harden seems to just be saying, like, yeah, I don't really care that much over the last couple of years. And I think that combined with Lillard at least publicly seeming like he wanted to finish the job in Portland, like, makes sense. And then all of a sudden they draft Scoot Henderson, who is literally him in a way. And they're like, well, damn, okay. Now we have 2 undersized guards again? Great.
I don't even mean by, like, the perception of, like, how people, because people don't like people and they like people, and people they like get away with stuff. People they don't like don't get away with stuff. That's the humans 101. I just mean as far as, like, actually demanding a trade.
Yeah.
What is the more egregious thing to be like, I have 3 or 4 years left of my contract, a contract that will take me till I'm like 36, and I am demanding I'm demanding a trade to one team who has like a all right package for me, but not like anything that blows your socks off. And that is the only team that I'm going to play for. Like when James Harden left Houston, he gave 2 teams at least. And there's like a third team that was possible with Miami, who's the same one. But like he at least gave more options for his crusade out of here.
Right. Like the Rockets could have taken in Ben Simmons and they didn't.
Yeah. And man, they would have been better in 2021 if they had taken Ben Simmons instead of a whole bunch of draft picks. But nope, now they're stuck with a whole bunch of young talent instead of a guy who doesn't play.
Imagine if they had got Ben Simmons. That would be really funny.